Welcome to Jesus Changes Everything, a daily podcast dedicated to providing a fresh look at the ancient and glorious truth that Jesus not only reigns, but is busy about the business of bringing all things under subjection, that celebrates the wonder and the glory that he has been given all authority in heaven and on earth. It's time once again for another Atin segment, and once again I'm going to tap into something that's tightly connected to our friend and my hero, Martin Luther. What I'd like for us to consider today is that Latin expression, Hoc Est Corpus Meum. Hoc Est Corpus Meum. H-O-C, new word, E-S-T as in Tom, new word, C-O-R-P as in Paul, U-S, new word, M-E-U-M. Hoc Est Corpus Meum. This is a Latin translation of the words of Jesus when he established the Lord's Supper. They mean literally, this is my body. These are, in the Roman Mass, the words spoken by the priest that bring to pass the double miracle, according to Rome, whereby the bread and the wine is changed literally into the body and blood of Jesus. That's one of the miracles. The other miracle is that it still looks like bread and looks like wine and tastes like bread and tastes like wine and smells like bread and smells like wine. It's a double miracle in the Roman view. Well, Luther rejected that view, but he held on to the reality of the bread and the wine being the body and blood of Christ. The story is told of the meeting between the Marburg Colloquy between leaders of the Reformation from the Reformed side and leaders of the Reformation from the Lutheran side. Representing the Reformed was Ulrich Zwingli. Representing the Lutherans was Luther himself. And they got together, they had their meeting, they sort of worked their way through systematic theology, comparing and contrasting. Well, this is what we believe about the doctrine of revelation. Well, this is what we believe about the Trinity. This is what we believe about the Incarnation. And page after page after page after page, they were in perfect agreement until the very end when they got to the sacraments. And Zwingli explained his own view, which is actually not the Reformed view, is what's called a mere memorial view, in which Zwingli said, we believe that the bread is bread and the wine is wine, and that all the Lord's Supper is a symbolic or representational celebration of the death of Jesus for us, that there's nothing special about the bread or the wine, and there's no real presence of Christ with us. To which Luther responded in his Luther-like way by pounding on the table and shouting over and over again, Hoc Est Corpus Meum. Hoc Est Corpus Meum, insisting this is my body. And the hopes and dreams of the Lutherans and the Reformed uniting together in the context of the Reformation went up in smoke, and the smoke coming out of Luther's ears. Hoc Est Corpus Meum, this is my body. Now, of course, Jesus spoke Aramaic, and it's given to us originally in the Greek, but in Latin, the expression is there. Now, something else you should know, not only are these the words that bring to pass the change in the bread and the wine in the Roman Catholic Mass, but it's because of this that we have a sort of bastardized version of that expression that we use in ordinary language, whether you're a Roman Catholic or not. You see, when a magician does his trick and there is a big change, he says his magic words, hocus pocus. hocus pocus. All that is as I said, a bastardization of Hoc Est Corpus Meum. The priest is doing something, in a sense, magical and changing the bread and the wine into the body and blood of Christ, and the magician is doing something magical, and so it's the similar expression, hocus pocus. So, now, when we use this expression, Hoc Est Corpus Meum, we should be agreeing with Jesus. These are the words of Jesus, though translated into Latin. Luther was not wrong in affirming this, though Zwingli was wrong in his understanding. And I would argue that Luther's wrong in his understanding of how this is true. And in fact, the Reformed view does do that. Now, again, one of the legends that's never been proven in the history of the Reformation is this, that on his deathbed, Luther had someone explain to him Calvin's view of what happens at the Lord's Supper, in which Calvin says that the bread and the wine become truly and really the body and blood of Christ, but not corporeally. That is, not in a physical sense, but in a true sense, just not a physical sense. And Luther supposedly said, basically, I could have lived with that. That would have been okay. And maybe these two streams of Reformation would have stayed together. But God knows what he's doing, and it's all in his hands. We're so excited to be in this time of racing to get ready for our beta year of the Shepherd's College. We're eager to get started. We're working hard, getting everything in place. And we're excited ultimately because of what it is we're trying to do. We're trying to prepare men for gospel ministry. And we're trying to do this in a way that does not require people to leave their homes, leave their families, leave their jobs, leave their churches, go into debt. Our tuition fees for an entire year are less than $5,000. That's a pretty good deal, about, maybe a fifth of what it might cost at a seminary to be prepared for gospel ministry. But we would like to do better still. We're looking for, and we've received some financial support to be able to offer full or partial scholarships. And we would love to see those who are excited about this vision come alongside of us and share in making this possible for these men to be prepared for gospel ministry. The lower our costs for a student to be able to come, the more students will be able to bring in. And those costs can go down as we have people giving for the purpose of scholarships. So today, in this week's segment in which we look for ministry partners, this is the kind of ministry partner we're looking for. Would you be willing, or would your church be willing to commit to support a young man preparing for gospel ministry through the Shepherd's College? There are any number of ways to do that. You can give a one lump sum. You can give by month. You can do that again as an individual. You can do that as a church, and all that giving would be tax deductible as well. Right now, as I said, we've got a couple of scholarships already set up. We'd love to have more. So think about it this way. If you could help a man prepare to preach the gospel faithfully, to serve as a shepherd under the great shepherd of the sheep, to learn in a context of discipleship, to be, yes, educated. Again, we're not opposed to the idea of pastors knowing things. We want pastors to know things. But to do this in a milieu, in a context that is biblical rather than cultural, to follow the pattern of discipleship in a person-to-person, in the midst of life kind of context, that excites you, would you consider coming alongside of us? If you gave to these scholarships, you would, again, not only bless the student who receives the scholarship, you would bless the Shepherd's College and Dunamis Fellowship, the mother organization. You would also bless the family. You would also bless the local church where this person is attending, and you would also bless the future local church where this person might serve. That's some pretty significant bang for your buck. We have a surprisingly low overhead, which is one of the reasons why we're able to offer this at such a low cost, but we do have genuine expenses that need to be met in order for us to be able to do this. So that's what I'm asking you. I want you to think about people overseas in much more difficult financial situations who would love to have the opportunity. People here right in our community who are eager to be prepared but don't have the financial wherewithal to even pay our low rates. People who want to send someone from their church to be trained here. We're asking you to come alongside. You know, one of the things you'll learn if you just simply look through the epistles of the New Testament, which, by the way, we're finally getting to in our Bible in 5 minutes segments. There's a whole lot of people in one church blessing people in another church. The church at Ephesus sending financial aid to the church in Jerusalem, or the church in Colossae sending aid to the church in Ephesus. This is the kind of thing that we're looking for. We're looking for churches and individuals who want to bless the broader church by helping finance the preparation for gospel ministry. I would love to be able, again, to have every student attend for free. Paul himself says that, when a soldier's sent off to war, he doesn't pay for himself to go to war. In the same way, when you go to boot camp, you don't pay for boot camp. And that's not what I want people to have to do to be able to come here. So please consider how you might, or your church might, come alongside us and financially support the work of the Shepherd's College. If you've got questions about the Shepherd's College, as always, you can go to shep.college, shep.college, shep.college. That's it. There's no .com after that, no .net, no .org. It's just shep.college. Or you can email us at the Shepherd's College 2021. No apostrophe, just the Shepherd's College 2021 at gmail.com. Now you can find that email address also at shep.college. So we're easy to find. I'm always happy to talk with you, to talk with your pastor, to talk with your elders, about, further detail about what we're talking about here. So please, let us hear from you. And as always, we are also coveting your prayers. There's an awful lot of relationship that goes into building an organization, particularly when that organization does so much of its work face-to-face. I'm thinking again about the old Ligonier Valley Study Center, that from which Ligonier Ministries grew. And the Ligonier Valley Study Center taught much the same kind of material that Ligonier Ministries teaches, but it taught this material in a much more face-to-face way. Yes, we sent out tapes, and we're probably the first adopters of videotape, but the bulk of the ministry in the first 10 to 15 years, all that was done on this particular campus in the country out in western Pennsylvania. Now, I give all that as background for today's Forever Friend, because I'd like to speak once again about one of the friends that I grew up with there in that context. Now, in the 13 years that we lived in western Pennsylvania, the Sproul family lived in 3 different houses. When we arrived at the beginning of the Ligonier Valley Study Center, the house we lived in actually belonged to the study center. It eventually was called Lecture House, and that's where the lectures would happen. That's where my father would teach, but in the back of the house is where the bedrooms were, or where we lived. And after a few years of that life, we built our own house higher up on the hill on the same 50-acre piece of property, and lived in that house for a few years, and then moved about a quarter of a mile down the road off of the property into our own house. But even that house, sharing a driveway with us, were two other families that were part of Ligonier Ministries. One was a woman and her daughters, who was the first full-time fundraiser for Ligonier Ministries. The other was the Fox family. Now, the Foxes knew my father when they were students in college at Westminster College, when my father taught there when I was 0 to 1 years old. Dave, the dad, and Tony Joe, the mom, they used to babysit me. And not that I remember, I was very, very small, but probably 5 or 6 years into the life of the study center, the Foxes moved onto the property and started working there. In fact, Dave was my first boss. My first job was cleaning the offices of the Ligonier Valley Study Center, and Dave was my superior to whom I reported. But Dave and Tony Joe had, when they arrived, 2 children, and then ended up having 2 more. The oldest was young Dave Fox, or Davy Fox. And that's the friend I want to remember and give thanks for. Davy was 2 or 3 years younger than me, but he nevertheless was a friend. He was one of the kids that would join in our kickball games, or our hikes through the woods, or whatever it was we were all doing together. And by the way, when we lived at that third house, they were the closest house to us, and right where their driveway ran into the common driveway was where I had just a little patch of paved ground with a basketball hoop tied up or hung up on a wooden pole. And so I used to shoot baskets there. And that was one of the things that young Davy Fox used to do with me, was shoot baskets. He would come over and we would visit and shoot and talk. And those were just really blessed times. We enjoyed one another's company. Most of the time there were other people around when we were doing things, but not all the time. And he was just a very easygoing guy. There was a time when the Foxes also attended the same. Is that right? Maybe not. No, I think I'm making a mistake there. But the Foxes were, they were just, and Davy himself, Davy was in some ways a little quirky. He was, maybe a little bit more interested in sciencey stuff than I might have been, but just a great sense of humor, and again, easygoing. He loved his dog, Bobo. They had a little squirrely little dog named Bo, and he called him Bobo, and he was a kid. I guess at the end of the day, that's part of what I keep coming back to with these friends, that we just shared this secure place, this blessed place where we were safe, and where we just could be kids, where we could play, we could trudge through the woods and build forts and all that kind of thing, or hike over to Campbell's Lake and see if we could catch a bass. I'm not sure what Davy's up to. The Foxes were one of the few families that moved to Orlando when Ligonier moved down there. And I believe Dave Fox is still living there, the dad. I'm not sure where Davy is or what he's up to. If you know him, please make sure to let him know that I was talking about him. I think with a name as common as this one, I might have a hard time getting this to him. But If you're there, Dave, I just want to tell you, I thank God for you. I thank God for the time that we had together and the fun that we had together, and I pray that you're doing well. The rest of you, once again, go find somebody. Tell them you're grateful for them. And then if you would, tell me how it goes. You've been listening to the Jesus Changes Everything podcast, a production of Dunamis Fellowship, the teaching outreach of Dr. R.C. Sproul Jr. If you've enjoyed this podcast, we encourage you to subscribe, which you can do at all the usual outlets, to tell your friends, and to spread the word. To learn more about the work of Dunamis Fellowship, please visit rcsproulJR.com. And join us next time on Jesus Changes Everything.